Do you know what? I've decided that I'm going to speak as an elder. I'm going to speak of it as an elder, transitioning the church. Yeah, I'm one of many. Transitioning the church from the second level to the third level. When I was a teen, I was transitioning. I was a teen, but I was baptized in the Spirit. I had brought revival into my school at 13. Okay, a bit like David Hathaway was involved in the same way at 13. So as 18, among other people of that era, I was moving the church from first level into the second level. And that is now seen in every town where there is Christianity. This is available. You can see it with your eyes. Second level churches are everywhere. Okay, so with the same faith, I am now an elder as part of a move transitioning the church from second level in every single location on earth into third level revival presence church or ecclesia. Okay, so I'm now speaking, I'm going to speak these things out. I'm not only going to waste my time on Facebook with people that are half interested. I've already started posting on my blog again, and I intend to go on other media and other social. Also, obviously, if I get invited, I'll preach outside in the world. But so far, after 50 years of Christianity, the order I have served since 13, which is the Melchizedek order, has not been welcome in any church on earth, apart from the brief revivals that we have seen in certain locations. So I'm not going to be discouraged. I'm going to just carry on my ministry and carry on speaking out what the Bible says. Whatever Bill Johnson and Rodney Howard-Browne have to say on the matter, they are out of date. They are extremely sensitive to the Melchizedek order, but they have no clue about raising up ecclesia over their locations. No clue whatsoever. They just think entirely in terms of signs and wonders, but they have not any clue about preaching the three stages of Christianity that are laid out for us in the New Testament. And this is the apostolic word. They are not preaching the apostolic word, which is why they're not getting apostolic results. I have very little time for Americans who call themselves apostles, or Africans, because what they mean is signs and wonders. They mean something about 8 weeks into Jesus' course. They have no clue beyond that. They don't spend long enough in the scriptures or in meditation upon the throne room to know the plans and the blueprints that are clearly laid out for us and have always been laid out for us from the Jews onwards. So I'm just going to rise in my authority, and I'm not going to hold back. And it looks like it's a sheer fantasy world, because I'm here on my own. My wife's left me, and it looks like madness, but it isn't total madness, because 3 million people have read my blog. So something's happened out there in the spirit. Someone was discussing the origins of tithe in Christian churches. He was saying the whole thing is a misnomer based on deacons being given 10 families to look after, which then became a fixed mathematical quotient to support each deacon. Now, because I've lived what the disciples lived in a house of 25, but for 6 years, and with considerably more variety than they experienced, because we had at least 4 or 5 cultures under the one roof at any time. This would have also been experienced by YWAM, would have also been experienced by Operation Mobilization in their ships, where many cultures cohabit. This is a unique experience. This late on in the gospel, 2,000 years after it first got preached into the world, but these are the sort of things, and the way our cultures intermingle, this is the sort of thing that God's building in his kingdom. So I have an extremely short fuse wire for people talking about church infrastructure. What we in Bible House listen for, all those that went through Bible House culture 40 and 30 years ago, is Christ being experientially formed in our souls. I get extremely angry with strongholds holding people's minds, and that for that reason, I really, as you can see, I go mad. I'm not speaking to a human person. I'm speaking to principalities and powers blocking the ears of Christians. Now, sometimes I get the details wrong, and I might have done yesterday with listening to what a chap was saying, but I'm getting the broad overview correct. Now, I do have a Toronto and Father's Blessing gap because I've been involved, like a lot of us in the union movement, have been involved away from churches, learning Galatians 2:20 in our everyday life. We kind of missed Toronto. We missed certain aspects of the Father's Blessing, and also Courts of Heaven revelation of the latest move in the last 20 years. There are limitations to my Chavod experience. I'm well aware that someone like Kathy Walters, Rodney Howard-Brown, or other people, John and Carol Arnott, might move and bring the Chavod presence of God into congregations and conferences. I've lived a fairly average post-Enlightenment life, being excluded from all pyramid culture, that's not only in church, I mean everywhere, as a fourth quartile, as a John-type personality. I'm a kind of John Luke person. I became a piano tuner. So did Tim Esawa, both for similar reasons. Both of us have articulate backgrounds. Tim has more Matthew attributes, hence political interests, than me. I've spent the last years, since 2008, studying the aspects of politics that relate to the occult plan. And I had various heads up about that, including my history teacher, emphatically pointing out, and I mean, to us it seemed absolutely random, but he emphatically pointing out Colonel Mandel House, of all things, and Treaty of Versailles. He 33rd degree Freemason, like so many of them, it turns out. And my headmaster in 1974, in his civics lessons of his own construction and not part of the national syllabus at all, breaking down the area of maritime law, which at the time went straight over my head. I didn't even know about any law, really. I just thought everything was right or wrong, as a teenager. So it went straight over my head as a non-political person. Jesse Sabota has been given to the world at this time to help educate us all more deeply on what my headmaster, a Knight of the Queen, a commander, former naval commander, was telling us. Jesse makes it clear that in order for Leviathan to sneak himself onto land matters, he has created a whole intricate set of workarounds because the province given to him was only maritime. So he's created a whole fiction called maritime law. Now, whether that is the beast that comes out of the sea, certainly it fits the bill at one level, by which governments address us. They never address us as living beings, which helps to explain why fourth quartiles feel out to sea with the whole political farce. It's a farce to conceal the secret contracts in blood of babies that Leviathan needs as permission to rule on land. Jesse was being raised under Gloria Vanderbilt and Hillary Clinton as a grandmother witch to be in charge of continually renewing these contracts. Last year, in a published affidavit, Jesse tells us that at the last minute, she did not renew the contract, but laid the whole contract at the feet of Jesus. There are incidents like these, and also Tim Rafat, in Brighton that seems significant. I don't understand the white area of witchcraft. So there's a black side and there's a white side. Some say Trump is a white side Luciferian, disguised as a God Christian. And a lot of us are trying to work out what Russell Brand is. And a lot of these public individuals are. Andrew Bridgen is Freemasonic as they come, and loads of these other, Farage. But we love listening to truth, don't you? We love listening to truth. Jordan Peterson speaks truth. But again, what order is he in? So there are incidents like these, and so I don't understand the white area of witchcraft, but there's a couple of things that have caught my attention. Tim Rafat is hugely connected with military intelligence, and as such, he's like Jeanette Archer as a former super soldier, and Swali, who used to manage the Templar Brotherhood's raising of zygotes from test tube stage to adulthood. She was involved with raising the one Templars claiming or trying to make Lucifer, who's now 24. She was raised. She was among that group of people. But as she says, the devil has his plans, but God is greater, and his plans are the real one. And the devil's plans keep getting held up. What they're doing now, they were trying to do, John Todd Collins says, they were trying to do in the 80s. He spoke to us in the late 70s, and he was declaring the sort of thing they were trying to pull off. They got as far as turning the lights out in LA as a test. But yeah, they've been held off. Chairman Mao was trying to swoop on Europe, and God used Mother Basilia Schlink to block that one. Third level intercessors have the power in front of the throne of God to shut people down. And we experienced that in Emsworth Church regarding the Yorkshire Ripper. So whether individually or as churches occupying this high place in worship and adoration and into the throne room, we have authority to block Satan's plans in the earth. So, and also preach the gospel properly. It's now difficult to know how seriously to take the split. Sorry, where did I get to? So, Tim Rafat, so we were talking about the sciences, like with Swali and, labs and Aldous Huxley type things, talking about the sciences being subject to the occult program. Now, whether it's just a further set of smoke and mirrors, but around 2014, the two super soldiers, I've forgotten both their names, but the surname of one was Casbolt, and the first name of the other was Max, and the latter was killed. Let us know that there was a split in the bloodlines. At that stage, we were following the Fritz Springmeier knowledge of 13 bloodlines, but there's an upper level of papal bloodlines that are unseen, kind of implied in the James Bond film. Remember that long table? Very, very dark scene in Venice or somewhere, or Italy somewhere. Was it the Vatican? Don't know, but this very dark group, that shadowy group that is actually higher than the 13 bloodlines. So Rothschild and Rockefeller are just but subsections of the Orsini family. Then there's the Brandini family, and all these sort of things. So Pepe Orsini is the grey pope. So 3 popes. There's one that's the black pope, and that's over the whole of Jesuitry. But the grey pope is, in effect, the managing director of the whole world from a political and international standpoint. Somewhere in the future of things is a man starting the new Las Vegas in Macau called Henry Breakspear, who is of the bloodline that goes back to the Breakspear that became a pope from the British Isles. Didn't know about that. That was around 1300. So this is, these are all closed families. It's now difficult to know how seriously to take the split. But Tim Rafat conducted an open ceremony using complicated physics quartiles. He kind of drew, this is not the Matthew, Mark, Luke, John thing, but he drew a square of 4 quartiles or something, and I didn't understand it, but kind of a graph thing. It means something to Freemasons. And he seemed to be a part of Solomon magic in Templars or Rosicrucians or Jesuit law. Tim was openly cursing the House of Rothschild dynasty. And since that time, we've either seen the death of Jacob Rothschild or that he has been scuttled off to work unseen somewhere. Whatever, the structures of the earth are changing to favour BRICS nations, and everything feels a bit Game of Thrones. One narrative is that the bloodline we thought had vanished, the Romanovs, have on the contrary reasserted themselves phoenix-like. Why that's caught my attention is that one of the princesses who escaped in 1918 is buried half a mile from me here on Hayling Island. Tim Rafat was being stalked by our Rothschild GCHQ with the same Wi-Fi DEW weapons, the ones they used in Maui. They're using on many satanic ritual abuse survivors who have now woken up to their MKUltra abuse, including Dr. Catherine Horton, who even took secret services in England to court over these abuses. Tim designed a Faraday cage in his Brighton flat so GCHQ couldn't kill him with his weapons. Brighton Argos reported a flood in the flat above him, which of course was arranged by the secret services to be able to enter his flat in their guise as plumbers, very A-team. They were offered to take, they were offered? Ordered, I think they should be saying. They were ordered to take Tim's life and try to void the ritual that Tim had done openly on the net in Brighton as filmed by the Alternative View conference channel. I've forgotten the name of the guy that died. Presumably he was attacked for the same reason. Who also brought us Dr. David Noakes and GC-MAF cancer treatments. Tim Rafat could be as evil as many in black magic circles, or he could be white side of the force. All I know is that all these guys, including Swali and Jesse Sabatar, have been raised severing babies' heads from youngsters to create the hardened, dissociating heart that the occult use to perpetuate their gross evils across the nations of the earth. Each ball game, Olympic ceremony and CERN ceremony, a major pop single are conducting rituals in plain view which grant permission to the 4 evil principalities over the 4 regions to continue to raise Lucifer over Europe and Jerusalem and Babylon. With each continuing advance, more vaccine programs, contrails, chemical and food and water alterations are being able to be carried out, as Hitler pioneered over Germany to create the stupor needed to conduct his Nuremberg spells. It's a bewitching of a people. It's every bit of C.S. Lewis' Snow Queen story where the characters are frozen. I once filmed a spider who had stunned a much larger bumblebee and was busy wrapping him in web, ready for later digestion. This all took place in my garden workshop, piano workshop. It was a perfect warning for me for how the devil is moving the whole world towards the world of eternal forgetfulness that Caleb has just described this week with Chantal in Aquarius Rising on that podcast from his own military exploits deep underground. Think of every strange being depicted on 70s album covers. Tarkus, Manticore. Now, on the Earth's surface, we live in a very vanilla existence, like farmed chickens, with a very narrow bandwidth of what St. Paul has described for us in Ephesians 6. At the moment, some of the ritual abuse survivors are seeking to cleanse the ley lines with music of gratitude, or prayers of gratitude, or declarations. I'm thinking this is like realigning plastic ducks in a feng shui pattern. But I'm no spiritual expert, right? I'm no spiritual expert lower than the second heavens. I do know about the highest heavens, the 24 elders before the throne. That Ekklesia meetings are being called higher up the Psalms of Ascent. That we are being brought into Psalm 133 unity for Psalm 134 and Psalm 110 and Psalm 24 and Psalm 149 type job. I know all this because I'm part of the forward party that was Emsworth Church 40 years ago, exploring deep praise, adoration and waiting on God together 2 or 3 times a week as a complete church, and every day as a Bible house of 25, from 1978 to 1984. I was also part of the Romans 7 rise in concupiscence. Where's that gone? So that's the Romans 7 thing. The more we seek God, it's really weird, isn't it? The more we seek God, every last vestigial agenda in our soul, it rises to the surface. And that's the warfare of our internal agendas being released and set free for high warfare. Let's hope that's the true story of Kevin Prosh and Mike Bickle, because otherwise they're going down big time, what they have done to female servants of God. The jury is out. Kathy Walters is for disbanding the whole work, which the truth angel might have told her. Me, I'm hoping it is a season of dishonour, like in David and myself, which can be redeemed in the third level. I'm hoping this also for Michael Reed, formerly of Brentwood, and Mark Stibbe, formerly of Chorleywood Anglican Church. I'm not enjoying the fact that Kevin, who is very similar to me as a songwriter and worship leader, and who was already exposed 30 years ago in the 90s, is still up to his Genesis 3 shenanigans 30 years later. As Kathy says, this stuff is very serious. And 46 years ago, God sent Alan Vincent, the prophet Alan Vincent, he's apostle and prophet, Rachel Hickson, one of these prayer intercessors, it's her dad, to my door, to cut me down to the south coast, to have my life rebuilt in the mercies of God. It was exactly like Nathan being sent to David and Kathy being sent by the truth angel to IHOP. The devil tries to blur the importance of Ekklesia and our roles here on earth. There's only a handful of us that have lived in such huge number under one roof in our lifetime, isn't there? Seeking God. This is God's holy place acceleration program to thrust us into his actual third level program, or Melchizedek program, that we saw in power in Acts, a city on a hill. I agree with Heidi's dream before the Lord as an elder in the transition from second to third level in the world body, that we do have to hand the reins of our programs over our heads. This was the dream she had, over our heads to Jesus Christ. But the 2009 vision given to me sonically, can you have a vision sonically? But that's what it was, of heavenly thunder is entirely accurate. Because it was nothing less than the heavenly furniture. It wasn't normal thunder. It was nothing less than the heavenly furniture that has been out of place since the Catholics 1700 years ago was being moved back to the correct stations in the heavenly tabernacle. The king pastors were being removed from Jesus' throne seat, and he was taking his seat once again. Corinthian Elders by Jack Fortenberry confirms this. 2009 free PDF given to the Body of Christ online when he died in 2014. Yes, so just download it. Really key booklet. Don Francisco's song about the Sunday Chainsaw Massacre of South Chard Pulpit and Sid's pastor office, effectively being chainsawed, is entirely accurate. There is no such office as pastor, king, and there's no such thing as a king in Israel other than the one installed in Psalm 2. It's entirely Jews deciding to do that. God never told them to do that. And he said to Samuel, it's not you they have rejected, it is me. The whole world is deceived in every location. So there is no ecclesia, no actual ecclesia anywhere. Because ecclesia means something in Greek. It means something in the language. Has nothing whatsoever to do with pastorasia. That is a human concoction. It is part of the feast of leavened bread, whereas we, if we're to be truly livers before the throne of God, must live continually in the feast of unleavened bread. We do not add to anything from the throne room. And pastor kings are an addition that has an offence to God, and it has nothing to do with ecclesia. So the whole world is deceived in every location. So there's no ecclesia anywhere acting as kings in the spirit. So we are collectively called as a nation of king priests. All we have in the earth, including Rodney Howard-Browne and Bill Johnson, is rabbi, pyramid, synagogues. And Jesus is shaking one to raise his ecclesia. There's something wrong there. And Jesus is shaking it all anyway to raise his ecclesia. Now expect more exposure of adultery and also satanic ritual abuse as the whole church is purged of its fake kingship order, the Ishmael of his true bride. Jesus didn't come to build synagogues. He didn't even build them in the Old Testament. This was the Jewish Babylonian idea that came out of the sewer of Babylon with little teaching centers that then Muslims have copied as imams in mosques. It's got nothing to do with the order of God. Teachings are within a framework that involved in the Old Testament elders and Levites, many of which carried the ark on their shoulders. In the New Testament, it's all in the Spirit in Romans 8, and it's all combined or merged into one. So it's not a separate Levite order and a separate governmental order. It's all one, elders, apostles. But the very nature of ecclesia is for everybody to be the same thing in training. All ministries for the perfecting of the saints and for the equipping of ministry. There's no other reason why ministry exists. So the fact that we haven't got people mobilized is just a manifestation of wrong believing, wrong seeing, disobedience, hard heart, and people not carrying out the protocols of the blueprints we get from heaven. So instead of this Ishmael of his true bride, We're going to have the Ekklesia under king priests or elders who raise up and ground other elders in every place. Because we are that one nation. We are that one holy nation of king priests. Now that's all at spiritual level, done on day one. If you're born again, that is your true person in the spirit. Spirit is your true person. Your soul and your body are what you have as clothing, but you are spirit. And when we're born again, it's because we're spirit. It's such a big thing when we're born again. It's not a change of philosophy. It's not a change of belief with our brain. It's a new creation person. We can't see it. All we can see is bodies. But this is the truth. And that's the being that walks simply out of your body at death. That's the truth. Forget what Genesis 3 tells you. Forget what every human being on earth tells you. They're clueless. If they spent, more days of their life like Christine does, seeing people into death at the hospice, in hospice work, then they would be more willing to think that. But everybody lives in this fantasy realm of being a self-run soul and forgets that one day God just calls us home. We have no control over that. As Jesus said, we can have filled our barns with plenty and plenty of grain and, be at rest and think, oh, that's it. And then God can call us home that night, and does. Every Fortune 500 person, he can just call them home. And several die at 50. And Steve Jobs just disappeared, didn't he? Unless he didn't, and that was another rigged thing by the Illuminati. Who knows? Who knows? What about that jogger? Got us all jogging, and he died around 50. God can just call us at any time, but we are spirit. So let's behave as spirit beings while we're on earth.